But we're going to go ahead and start with the presentation. But before we get started, I want to welcome everybody to the Economic Development and Tourism Committee meeting. But I'd like to ask Senator Burns if you'd open us up in prayer.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Treasurer. Father God, we're grateful for opportunities and challenges and a new day to make decisions that will impact the people of our state, help us to make wise decisions that will be pleasing in your sight. In Christ's name we pray. Amen.
Thank you. The first item we're going to have is we're going to get a presentation from Joe and Renee. If you could, do you want to do the podium? Okay. And welcome. Oh, yeah, there it is. It's
All right.
on.
Thank you, Senator, and congratulations on your big move to D.C.
Thank you.
I know you'll take good care of Georgia. I'm Rena Peck. I'm an ecologist. I'm the executive director of Georgia Rivers. We run the state's water trail program and work to connect people to Georgia's rivers so they fall in love with them and want to protect them. Joe Cook is here with me, and he'll talk about river recreation economy. And I'm here to talk about my favorite water trail, the Okefenokee Wilderness Canoe Trail. Many of y'all have been, and those who have not been, please come down. The more people we get down there, the more the economic development occurs. Right now, there are about 750,000 visits a year to the Okefenokee, and we're very excited that the United States of America is nominated to the World Heritage List, the Okefenokee National Wildlife Refuge, so that we would be on the map right up there with the Grand Canyon and Yosemite and the giant redwoods. So it's my honor, Senator Beach, to give you this dossier. It's beautiful, almost coffee table book about water and fire in the land of trembling earth, and the nomination that America's given to the world to put the Okefenokee National Wildlife Refuge as a tourism destination internationally.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. World Heritage status will bring more tourism to the Okefenokee. So we would go from 750 jobs to 700 more jobs. There's also been investment in an Okefenokee experience, building out a nature center in Waycross. $2.5 million were put in the budget this year for that, and an observatory to look at the international dark sky on the western side, and then a cultural center in Folkestone. So those would bring more jobs as well, and more heads in beds and people in restaurants. So we're real excited about that, and want to make sure that this opportunity is protected from mining that the Fish and Wildlife Service is concerned would harm the Okefenokee National Wildlife Refuge. Senator Beach, last year, you put forth the Senate Bill 132 for a short moratorium, just a pause on mining on Okefenokee Trail Ridge to give time for more science and determination, and for the legislature to look at what it can do. It also would give time to help the land trust community line up funding to buy out that Okefenokee Trail Ridge. As we know, private property rights are very important, but no one has the right to damage other people's private property, let alone all of ours private property, which is a national wildlife refuge. Also, mining, as we all know, lowers the water table, which increases drought, and already the Okefenokee has the largest and most expensive fires in the nation, so we don't want to exacerbate that situation. Fire is natural in the swamp, but we don't want it getting up into the tree farms in the uplands. And if you've got a higher fuel load, it's much harder to suppress and contain and keep out of there. So there's a great opportunity with two House bills. One is Okefenokee Protection Act to ban mining forever. The other's a 5-year moratorium. Y'all might put your heads together and offer up something else. for a pause, a study, something that gives us time to make sure we're doing the right thing. This is something that the legislature has done before. When Little Tybee was threatened with mining 50 years ago, the legislature created the Coastal Marshlands Protection Act that we're all very proud of now, and that's a signature historic piece of legislation that has made our coastline have more marshland than any other state. And, you know, this also helps EPD from having to fool with these permits every 6 years or so. There's a reason why it's taking them so long to make a decision. If it were apparent, then the decision would already be made. So I think we can take a little more time with that. If there are any questions, I'd be glad to entertain them.
Yes.
Thanks for your presentation, Ms. Peck.
Sure enough, Senator Good.
You know what irony is? You know, I went down and visited with y'all in the swamp this past summer, and it was really interesting because the whole time I'm down there, you know, they're talking about the history of when they tried to drain the swamp, you know, long time ago. Mm-hmm. And the ironic thing was the tour that we took was all promulgated because the ditches that they dug to drain the swamp is where the only place you could really run the boats that was in there. And I thought that was kind of ironic that
Sure.
you
Access.
know, that provided access and tourism for a lot of the swamp. And I think
Right, it's a balance.
it was kind of interesting, said for me, and rather ironic
Sure.
that was what promulgated the tours and the ability for most people to see, you know, and spend time in areas of the swamp.
Yeah, I agree. And that's something that our National Park Service and Fish and Wildlife Service with the refuges has to balance, keeping a natural area natural, but also having access to it. So these water trails do not tip the balance, but mining that would pull water away from the swamp would. So it's just a matter of scale there.
Do you actually see the mining operation as pulling water away from the swamp?
Yes, sir, I do. That's what, they know that that's true too. Within their permit, they show where they will draw down the water underneath the swamp up to 14 feet. Of course, they expect it will recover. We don't know how much it would recover until that happens, and many don't believe that that's worth the risk. So between pumping the water for the centrifuge to dole out the heavy mineral sands, which would be used for titanium dioxide, and the lighter sands for operations itself, that's 1.4 million gallons a day. The water that would go into the pits is 1 million gallons a day. And this demonstration mine, and we're not talking about this demonstration mine for the ban on mining, we're talking about the rest of Trail Ridge. So the demonstration mine's 582 acres. You've got 45,000 acres that are at risk, that are at lower elevation and closer to the swamp. So digging 50-foot deep pits across those lower elevations would take the bottom of the pit below the water level of the swamp, and then that would completely exacerbate. And as you pull the groundwater away, as you know, groundwater and surface water do have connection. That's expected to lower the water level of the swamp. And also, as you know, the swamp is very shallow. It's only 1 foot to 3 feet. And already the water trails go dry in some places due to drought. So to decrease access for Fish and Wildlife Service to do research, for tourism in Georgia would be a real missed opportunity. So in my mind, mining is bad business for a tourism economy, which is what the Okefenokee region is. Thank you. All right, in your packet, you'll see a beautiful cover of what I just gave Senator Beach, the Okefenokee National Wildlife Refuge World Heritage bid. There's an article from Georgia Trend Magazine, 8 pages worth of river recreation, and there's a page that I've turned over that is Kim Bednarik of Okefenokee Swamp Park. Okefenokee Swamp Park and the Okefenokee National Wildlife Refuge has gone on record against mining by the swamp. And what else is in there? a fact sheet from Georgia Rivers about those bills I mentioned. And
And the cover girl.
yes, yeah, Miss September is on Georgia Trend. So thank y'all so much for your time, and thank you, Senator Beach, for your bill last year. And I really appreciate y'all increasing Georgia tourism and bringing more people here.
Well,
Take
thank you
care.
for all your work and your passion.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Joe, are you next? Welcome, Joe.
Thank you, Chairman Beach. I do work with Rena at Georgia Rivers. I'm the Paddle Georgia coordinator. Any fishermen here? Y'all have heard the story about if you give a man a fish, he eats for a day, right? If you teach a man to fish, he'll eat for a lifetime. But with us Georgia anglers, it doesn't work. You teach a man to fish here in Georgia, he's just going to sit on his boat all day and drink beer.
Ain't nothing wrong with that.
No, nothing wrong with that. I am here to talk to you about boating, recreation, and tourism on Georgia's rivers. And I'll tell y'all straight out what we would like to see the state do as far as adopting policy. We would like to see policy adopted that protects our right to float down any stream that is capable of floating a recreational watercraft like a canoe or kayak. You might consider them tourism and economic development vessels because they bring people here to our state to float our rivers and streams. That's what we want. There is no bill in play right now. We are here just to educate and tell y'all about this issue. So a little bit of background. In 2023, y'all passed Senate Bill 115. It was a good bill. It said that Georgians have the right to boat, hunt, and fish on any navigable stream. Great, super. Can anybody tell me what a navigable stream is here in Georgia? No.
1863 or something.
It's 1863 law says a river is navigable if you can float a boat loaded with freight down it. Does that mean a steamboat loaded with 500-pound bales of cotton? Or does it mean a canoe loaded with a pile of beaver pelts or deer pelts? Both of those kinds of boats were used in 1863. We don't know what navigable means. So last year, a bill was introduced to try to help define that. It was a list bill introduced in the House that said, here are the navigable streams, here are the non-navigable streams. Well, here are the navigable streams, and implicitly, the other streams that are not on this list are non-navigable. That bill was widely opposed. Instead, the House created a study committee to look at the issue of navigable streams. That House study issued a report in December. They recommended against creating a navigable streams list, which was really good. But they also said, let's not do anything else. Let's not change any laws. And so that brings us to today. And where that leaves us is with a lot of uncertainty about where we can boat, fish, and hunt. It all depends on whether it's navigable or not. And we haven't gotten a good, strong definition of navigable. So that's about hunting and fishing. Navigable, whether a stream is navigable or non-navigable, determines where you can fish and hunt. If you're on a non-navigable stream, you own to the middle of the stream bed. If you own both sides, you own the entire stream bed, and you can control hunting and fishing on that stream. Boating is a different issue altogether. Boating is about the rite of passage, okay? We're not talking about the rite of passage that you do when you swim across the river or you jump off a cliff or swing from a rope swing to prove you're no longer a boy. The rite of passage we're talking about is the right to float down that stream in a boat. That is a right that has existed in Georgia since statehood. Our rivers and streams were our original superhighways. This legislature, throughout the 1800s, passed laws enabling millers to build dams to create grist mills and sawmills, but invariably, when they adopted those laws to allow these mills, they did so with the provisions that those streams had to remain open for passage of fish and boats. In 1849, the Georgia Supreme Court heard a case, Young v. Harrison, and the Georgia Supreme Court said, there are three kinds of rivers and streams here in Georgia. There are ones that are wholly private. Those are streams you can't put a boat on. They're not big enough to put a boat on. There are streams that are private, but which you have the right to pass down. And there are arms of the sea, which are those big streams that flow into our ocean that are tidally influenced. So the Georgia Supreme Court said in 1849, it doesn't matter whether it's a privately owned stream or a publicly owned stream, you have the right to pass down it. Then we get 1863, the codification of the Georgia law, and they said that a navigable stream is one that can float a boat loaded with freight. That codification mentioned nothing, not a single thing about boating passage. In the 1900s, that 1849 Young v. Harrison case was reaffirmed. The Supreme Court said, we have the right to pass down any stream, whether navigable or non-navigable, that will float a boat. We believe that right still exists, despite in the 1990s, a particular case called Givens versus Itchaway. And some of y'all might be familiar with this. This was a case in Baker County in which the Jones Center, which does wonderful environmental research and ecological research, it's created by the Woodruff Foundation. In the early 90s, they began blocking passage down Itchaway-Notchaway Creek, and a local sportsman named Carol Givens organized opposition to this, because this is a stream that the people of Baker County had been using for generations, and he thought it was wrong. So the case eventually went all the way to the Supreme Court, and I don't know if there's any lawyers in the room, but you had, in this case, a man with a 7th grade education, a sportsman from Baker County, against the wealthiest, most influential family in the state. How do you think that case came out? They ruled in favor of the Woodruff Foundation. And they said that that stream was not navigable, even though it had been used for navigation throughout the 1800s. And I talked to a Supreme Court justice who sat on that court that made the decision, and he told me, he was the dissenting voice, he and another one were dissenting voice in that particular case. He said that the reason that that case was found that way is because Givens did not have the resources and did not present the case as it should have been presented. He also said it was presented that way because of who held the purse strings, who had the most money. That has been presented as the seminal boating passage case here in Georgia, and since then, we've seen an eroding of the number of streams that boaters have the ability to paddle down. We've seen stream closures all over the state. And that's where we find ourselves today. We find ourselves in a situation where more and more streams are being closed to the public. I got a call this week from a man in Lumpkin County who's been paddling the Etowah River his whole life. A man upstream from him, he lives on the Etowah River. He has riverfront property on the Etowah River. A man upstream from him that owns both sides of that stream said he didn't want any people coming down that stream anymore. He closed it off. He's got no trespassing signs strung across the river. And that man who lives on that stream himself can no longer float down that section of stream because this property owner is asserting his property rights, saying, I have the right to close this stream to the public. You, also a riverfront property owner, can no longer pass down this stream. That's what we're facing right now. We're facing a lot of uncertainty about where we can boat legally on Georgia streams, and we have no clarity. And we need the legislator to give us clarity. So I'm just going to end with just a few questions to present to y'all and see if y'all can answer these questions and ruminate on them. I'm not going to answer them now. Is it just and right for a single streamfront property owner to have the authority to close down a stream to the public, including streams upon which tourism businesses, canoe and kayak outfitters depend? They depend upon passage down that stream to do their business. Is it just and right for a single streamfront property owner to have the authority to close the stream to the public, thus excluding every other streamfront property owner from passage down that stream and the use and enjoyment of that stream? Is it sound state, is our state policy on river and stream access and passage best serving the interest of Georgia's tourism industry if outdoor recreation tourists in neighboring states do not visit our state for fear of being harassed or even arrested when traveling on Georgia's streams? I've got a letter that says that very thing from the Appalachian Canoe and Kayak Club in Tallahassee. They don't come to Georgia for fear they're going to get harassed or arrested. Finally, is our state policy on river and stream access and passage serving the best interest of Georgia's tourism industry if 4 out of 5 neighboring states have policies that welcome recreational boaters while Georgia's policy does not welcome recreational boaters? I'll leave y'all with those questions, and I'll be happy to answer any questions that y'all might have.
Okay, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Cook. Said, do you have ownership of real estate here in Georgia?
I do.
About how many acres would you think you own?
I have about a half acre.
Okay. So on your yard, your house, whatever it may be, somebody wants to trespass across your property. What are your thoughts?
Every day on my property, people pass by on a sidewalk in front of my property.
Sidewalk, which is right away, publicly owned.
Both right away. And what the law says, what Georgia's law says, is that right of passage is essentially a right of way for people to pass. And that's how our state has operated since statehood. We've always had that right.
If they decided they want to go through your front door and out your back door, you'd probably have an objection to that. And
That is
for
not a
me,
right of way.
And so for me, I live close to the Broad River, and you know, I have a lot of neighbors that have complained to me about people that are not boating down the Broad River. Said their complaint is not that they're floating or whatever. Now it's kind of an interesting business model. Before I look at the outfitters that put people in the Broad, their business model is to put people onto other people's property, and make money off of it. But the problem that I have from the property owners up and down the Broad River is that when they get out of the river, I actually, and this is one of the things that really, I couldn't believe this happened, but I had one of my neighbors, he said, just come down here, sit with me for one day. So I went down there and sat with him and his wife. I was sitting on a little sandbank beside him and his wife, and no further away than Senator Bearden, a gentleman pushed his boat up out of the water and began to urinate directly in front of the man and his wife and myself. Yep. And that's the problem that we have, is that I've not talked to a person yet that wants to stop people from floating down the river. But I have talked to a lot of people up and down the river that are disgusted with the littering. They actually broke into his home, and his wife came home one day, and there were actually some people that were fornicating in his home. And that's where, for me, that's the problem that we deal with. And I would have never believed that could be the issue. Now, I will tell you, that I have streams on my property. And I know at certain times I could float an inner tube on them. Mm-hmm. There's certain times on the Broad River where I have to pick up an inner tube and walk it down the river. Because it gets so shallow at certain droughts. And that's where, for me, I don't have a problem with the folks that want to float on the river. It's the disrespect of the property owners that's the issue. And that's where, one way or the other, and I told them, I said, the only way that you're going to make this enforceable is either you find the person that owns both sides of the river, or you work with somebody on the other side, put a fence up one day about this high off the water, and then you have the attention of the outfitters that are putting them on there. And then once you have that attention, you make sure those outfitters understand what they need to do to educate their customers, which they're getting paid for putting somebody on other people's property. And I'd hate to think that somebody would be, making a business out of putting people through your front door and out your back door, and you're not in agreement with that. And that's the real big issue. It's a property rights issue. And I mean, I love, you know, floating down the Broad River. I love floating down a lot of rivers. I've been down a lot of rivers here in Georgia, and I want to continue to be able to do that. But it's a respect issue that we deal with, and that's the biggest problem that I hear from any property owners own it.
Yeah, and that, we hear that too. You know, the old saying is you can't fix stupid. You've got thousands of University of Georgia students coming down that river on the weekends, and they're not there just to boat, they're there to drink, and so you run into problems like this. But what you're describing is people getting out on people's land and doing things on their land. That is trespassing. That's trespassing. Paddling down the stream and floating down the stream is not trespassing. But once you step on that land, you are trespassing, and there are laws against trespassing.
Your definition of trespassing and these property owners are different. They don't mind the trespass as long as they stayed in the stream.
Exactly.
But it still is trespassing.
It is trespassing when they get out on the land, and they can be arrested for that.
Yeah.
They should not be arrested for floating down the stream.
Thank you for your comments.
Yes.
All right, we got Senator Hodges. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Cook, can you tell me, do any other states, when they consider riparian rights, do they consider that the state owns all of the river bottoms?
I can't answer that question, but I can tell you this. Florida, South Carolina, North Carolina, and Tennessee all have policy that say if you can float a boat on the stream, then you have the right to pass down that stream. That's what the policy is in our 4 neighboring states.
But they don't take a position on ownership of the bottom.
I can't answer that question. I'd have to do research and get back to you on that. But generally, what that Young v. Harrison case from 1849,
Yeah.
it said they're private, but you still have the right to pass down it. In the 1800s, this legislature actually passed laws that said, that required streamfront property owners to maintain and clear obstructions from those streams so that people could pass down them.
I get that. And I'm not a lawyer, and I'm certainly have never done any legal research, but the difference between granting the public rights to somebody else's property is one thing. And it's different from saying that the state owns a certain thing, a certain property, and you can have public right-of-way, such as the river bottoms. And and I'm not sure I know of another state that does that, but if you do, I'd like to know that. Okay.
We can do some research on that.
Thank you.
Good question.
Senator Burns? Okay. Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Cook.
Thank you
Appreciate
for your
y'all
time.
both being here. Thank you again for
Appreciate
breakfast the other day. And I want to thank Brian Hudson and the Hudson Group for providing breakfast this morning. We've done breakfast every one of our committee meetings, and
Leadership, Mr.
that's
Chairman.
leadership. Yes.
Leadership, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, it wouldn't have anything to do with you being on the U.S.
currency.
Made it,
Down
no,
in Savannah,
You said that you're kind of making
it rain
Okay.
with breakfast.
All right, well, we'll go there later. All right, we're going to take up House Bill 14. I know Representative Carpenter, this started out as a cornbread bill, and it's kind of morphed into some other things, and I'm going to ask
Opportunities abound.
3 people to come up here and sit if you could, and that would be Matt Campbell, Brian Hudson, and Senator Halpern, if y'all would come up. We're going to be working off LC 590163S. I am going to strike on page 1, after projects on line 6, we're going to strike where it says to amend Title 50 through line 13 where it says construction. We're going to strike those lines. And then we're going to strike part 2, which is lines 284 through 418. We're going to strike that. Is that correct?
Yes, Chairman, could I just make one comment?
Yes.
I think if your intention is just to remove part 2 there, in the title language, it would be preferable to strike from the word "to" on line 7 to construction on line 13.
Okay, so
2 on line 7.
2,
163S, is that?
Yes.
Yeah, tell me where to strike.
Yes.
160, so the word two on line
Go
seven.
to the one that was handed out. This one. Okay. Two on line, there's no two on line 7.
Oh, it says so
Oh, yeah, yeah.
as two
Two,
revised.
as two revised, yes.
Yeah, so from two revise on line 7,
Okay,
all the way down to construction.
okay, that's what we need to strike?
Yes, sir, because we want to retain the amend Title 50 language.
Okay.
Gotcha.
All right, so we'll strike on line 7, to revise, all the way to line 13 to the word construction, and then we will strike all of Part 2, which is lines 284 through 418, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, everybody got that? So we're striking that. Mr. Carpenter, do you have any comments before I turn it over to these individuals to talk about?
No, it's such a pleasure to be here at 8 o'clock again. I love this committee.
It's not 6.
And had a great night with Senator Eccles last night. We did a little economic development tourism. We toured the world last night, so.
Well, before we
glad
start
to
on
be
this
here.
bill, I do want to talk about Senator Eccles. I get my Sunday paper. I'm old-fashioned. I still get the paper delivered to my driveway, and I see the best dressed. Drew Eccles, a member of our Economic Development Committee,
The gentleman from
is
Gainesville,
best dressed, so congratulations.
his wife. His wife.
All right, well, Mr. Carpenter,
I'll
thank you.
have a seat. Thanks for having me.
All right, we're going to start with, we're going to go ahead and start with Part 1, which would be the film industry. Mr. Campbell, you want to tell us a little bit about Part 1, Sections 1.1? No, you were first.
Yeah, so post-production is a valuable part of the film industry, entertainment industry overall, gaming and et cetera. We have some brilliant, talented post-production companies in the state of Georgia that do incredible work. Many of them Georgia grown, many of them relocated here from other parts of the country. And they employ hundreds, if not thousands of people, and that can grow. There's a huge opportunity to bring more work here, create more revenue for the state, and create jobs, not just in Metro Atlanta, but throughout the state of Georgia, rural Georgia, especially where these jobs are needed. The competitiveness with other states has also been in question as of late because others see Georgia's industry and they envy us, and they are creating tax credits and such things to steal our business, and this keeps us competitive with New York, Texas, and others. So post-production is the visual effects and things that happen at the end of a production, the finished product. This measure would allow other groups, if Georgia does miss out on a production, to send the work to Georgia for post-production, creating sustainable work and creating jobs for Georgians, and will make a huge economic impact on the state of Georgia.
Okay. Anybody from the film industry wish to speak on this part of the bill? We'll open it up for public comment. If you'd come to the podium and tell us who you are and what organization you're with.
Chairman, and thank you to the rest of the committee for hearing my comments. I'm Hani Korngold. I'm from South Georgia Studios. We're outside of Valdosta, Georgia. We're right on the Florida line. I also have a production company here. We've been here for 4 years. We moved from California to be here. We also founded a nonprofit called Philanthrofilms. We're all about workforce development and education in film. I'd like to talk about this incentive. Some of you may have heard that our film industry in the state is struggling right now. It's really in a tragic place. Our sound stages are at the lowest occupancy they've been since COVID, which is a terrible place to be. Our once $4.4 billion industry is at a fraction of what it was. The recent strikes are what really precipitated that. In addition to COVID sort of started that. So we really have this perfect storm happening right now. You can kind of compare it to what Helene was to our citizens and to our farmers. This particular storm in the film industry has created this real deficit for our film industry in the state of Georgia. The post-production proposal that's before you would allow production that's not filmed in Georgia to take place here. Why is that important? Did you know that post-production represents 30% of the budget of a film? Well, Well, that's substantial. So what it means is, yes, not only can post-production that's filmed here take advantage of the tax incentive, but films that were not shot here can actually take advantage of that. And that would bring new business to Georgia. That would keep our post-production workers, as Matt had indicated, busy, give the post segment an opportunity to really grow and attract new business into the state. And as Matt said, when productions are choosing other countries and other states right now, other states are aggressively coming after Georgia, this post-production new inclusion would attract new producers, new studios, get them to stay in Georgia long-term, and then ultimately building the industry that right now is really desperately struggling. And also the rural uplift is really important to companies like mine. We have a 112-acre development, a soundstage development, where we will be doing post-production, and we currently do post-production. So that element is really, really important to us. I really thank you for your sincere consideration, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay. Any questions on the film? Okay, what, Mike, Tim? Senator.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I'm seeing this for the first time, so I'd love some clarification about a couple provisions in the substitute. One would be lines 96 through 97. It appears that we are adding an entirely new type of, quote, production. The qualified production definition starting on line 81 is changing. We're adding user-generated content distributed exclusively via social media platforms. I guess I'll call this the Mr. Beast provision. Is the intention here to add a tax credit to people who make YouTube videos for money?
Can you speak to that,
Sorry, she
Matt?
doesn't have a copy of
she doesn't know
this.
that. Okay,
I'll
all right.
answer.
Sure.
No, that's not the intention, and also, this isn't just something that came out of nowhere. There was a standalone post-production tax credit that expired at the end of 2022. So this would essentially reinstate that and then enhance it so that we can recruit more business and create more opportunity. So,
Okay.
and modernize it somewhat.
Respectfully, I don't think that's responsive. Is the intention to specifically like YouTube content creators, now the tax credit would be available to them? Is that the idea?
I don't speak for YouTube content creators, and I'm not sure on that answer. The visual effects post-production companies, there's several that are members of our organization, Big Entertainment Network. They make everything from Hallmark movies to Star Wars to, anything on Apple
Okay.
TV.
I love most of what I'm seeing with the bill. I'm going to make an amendment to try to get that out because I think I'm not getting a direct answer on it, and I don't know that we
I
want to.
can clarify perhaps
Okay,
from a
please.
producer perspective.
Yep.
Again, this is about post-production. This is about the phase of the production process that happens at the very end once the images are captured.
Right.
So perhaps the distinction there is particularly these YouTube type videos, they have to capture their visual elements, and that would not apply to this.
So-
It would only be, from my understanding, only the portion of post-production at the end of the process.
But I can stop you there. I agree with the post-production issue across the board, except for in that context. That's just my position. Anybody else free to disagree? Lines 134 to 142, there is an additional 5% tax credit for what appears to be an investment in counties experiencing a certain level of poverty and having a certain population. Do we know which counties qualify as individually having a population of less than 100,000 with 10% or more of such population living in poverty?
That number there, after this was heard in the House committee a week or two ago, that there's actually been a suggested correction to that came directly from the language on the Department of Economic Development's website, which takes out the population number and encompasses whatever counties deemed of the 159 by the Department of Economic Development that are falling short of production, which is a lot of, most of outside of Metro Atlanta and then Savannah area.
I'm willing to vote for that provision without knowing the list. I just think it would be good to know exactly which counties are, because this is clearly one of those provisions that's written to target specific counties. It's pretty
I
specific.
think the
so-
intent, when this bill was drafted, was to capture all communities that are not experiencing a lot outside of Metro Atlanta, which would actually be a higher number than that population of 100,000. Because you
Okay.
think about Columbus and Augusta, Macon, they do productions and could do more. There's workforce there, but they would not fit this requirement.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay. Senator Chairman Watson?
I'd just like some clarification on that. I mean, this is, line 139, population. And then,
Okay.
and that's unconstitutional as far as I know. I'd love to have input from our council.
that number. I would like a minute to look into that if it's.
Okay.
Just on the fly, express an opinion right now that it's unconstitutional, but it does appear to be something like the population. It's one that aspect.
I mean, you can't put population numbers in the bill. You have to do like regions or designations that are recognized by the state. I know that from health, in that certificate of need is specifically relating to regions and populations. You can't do population numbers.
Legislative Council, do you have a comment on that?
Chairman, before I express an opinion on something like that, I'd really like to take a moment
Okay.
and look at it.
All right, well, we'll move on. Can you check into that really quick? We may want to strike that line then if we have to.
Find her email.
Yes.
Again, Mr. Chairman, just point of clarification on line 136. An additional, 35, 36, an additional tax credit of 5%. What's a base credit?
The base credit right now is 20% with a 10% uplift for
For
the
the
peach,
logo?
and then an additional 5%
So
on
this
top
would
of
be
that.
up to, this would go to 35%?
Correct.
Is that correct?
If filmed in rural Georgia or outside.
Whoa, I think you're using, that's the other question. This is for post-production credits for film that either occurs in Georgia or out of Georgia. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, correct.
Sorry.
There's already a tax credit for post-production if they film in Georgia. This would be for only those that are filmed outside of Georgia.
This is a post-production credit for those filmed outside of Georgia?
As well.
So, but let me clarify on that. This is, take the film tax credit in general. This is something separate. Film post-production, say you film in Georgia, do the production in Savannah, right?
You film in Savannah?
Right. Or LA or wherever.
Well, let's start with Savannah.
Savannah. And you choose to send the editing, the visual effects post-production to New York or somewhere else for
Correct.
that phase of it, that 30,
30%.
because they have this whatever, Matt, you lose on that work.
Okay.
Okay, that would help retain that. The other, say a production does not come to Georgia, say they do film in New York or Hollywood. The part of their production that's the visual effects, the editing, can, with this, the change made to what was before, send that to Georgia. The businesses come to Georgia, to our guys, to our workers in Georgia, our businesses in Georgia to do that film post-production, that final work, and make it look good and put that Georgia stamp on it. That allows them to recruit that business, whereas now they're missing out on that. So you're getting the work you have now, but then it's creating an opportunity and an avenue to recruit and compete and bring more work to Georgia. Obviously, we want to have all film production here, but if we miss on something and it goes somewhere else, we can still get that post work and still keep the economy rolling.
What would qualify me for the additional 5%?
To do it outside of, in the whatever definition that suits, outside in a place like Valdosta, Georgia, where Ms. Korngold has invested in doing post-productions, somewhere to create more opportunity and jobs where there are not many.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Senator, Chairman.
Quick question. Post-production, you say, equates to about 30% of the cost of a film. What about jobs? Is it similar? Is it 30% of the jobs? Is it less? Is it more?
If there's visual effects, there can be hundreds, and I don't know if you've seen any film that's got visual effects.
So, I mean, but
When you
would
look
it
at the
be-
credits, it could be hundreds of jobs per.
Okay, but would it be 30%? Would it be more? Would it be less?
It really depends on whether there's a visual effects element. If there is, which most films these days use visual effects, the numbers of people working in the post is exponentially.
So the real, what you're really going after would be post-production of stuff that was produced elsewhere. I mean, that's the game, or is it?
I think that's the attraction to this.
Yeah, new revenue, and you want it all. And the post jobs are year-round, whereas film productions come in and it's amazing and they great things, but that's transient, right? So the production ends in Jackson, Georgia, that goes somewhere else. Where post, these are year-round jobs, year-round employees and with the opportunity to bring in work from elsewhere to perform that visual effects post here, it keeps, year-round sustainable employment. You don't have dips and curves. You have just a constant growing industry of full-time good jobs.
Would you expect that it would grow the job base?
Yes, sir.
Paul, Mr. Chairman, currently, post-production receives no credit. Is that
Not a
true?
standalone credit, no, sir.
Not a
If it's
standalone credit.
Not their own,
Yeah,
such
but
as
they
what we're
do
doing.
enjoy the credit from the current film tax credit option. Is that not true?
the production company, and Ms. Korngold can correct me if I'm wrong, the production company, company A, if you want to call it, comes in and films, and the post-production company would benefit on that because it's work if they're using them. But they don't have an avenue to get their own tax credit for that work. They get the work, the production company gets the credit, and then so on.
So
to
currently,
create
the post-production company does not receive any credit?
No, sir.
Only if it is filmed in the state of Georgia.
But, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Only if it's filmed in the state of Georgia?
part of the-
So
Correct.
currently, you receive a 30% tax credit for films filmed in Georgia?
Yes.
Not
that are-
just standalone posts. It has to be part of the total production.
Skin says no.
Yeah, that's right. No, it has to be part of the total production.
It has to be
not
part
its
of the,
own.
it has to be part of the production that was filmed in Georgia. Correct. So this basically separates the manufacturing process. It basically takes the filming portion and the post-production and makes a distinction. And it's basically saying, if you take this portion of your manufacturing, regardless of whether your car was made elsewhere, we can finish the manufacturing here and you can receive the same incentive that you would have if the entire car was manufactured here, if that makes any sense.
And that, the projections on job increase and all that, the visual effects post-production companies we have here can easily increase their employment numbers by 50% the first year they were able to do something like this.
Okay, all right, and then let's wrap this up. Yes, sir.
Can you give us an estimate of the value of the tax credit to the company and the cost to Georgia? Is there a fiscal note associated with this bill?
There was a cap on it, so a fiscal note, as I understood, was not required.
And the cap is?
The cap on this language here is 60 million, and that was debated and talked about, and the reason why the cap was that high is because that's that much work out there that can be brought in. So you don't want to limit yourself, whereas, if you, such a lower cap, it would basically, make us less competitive. That being said, that's what it is, and it is, 60 million per year if I'm looking at the current version.
I think what we're trying to do here, I'll just make a comment, I think we're trying to cradle to grave do film here, not just, we've been knocking it out of the park on production, but we want to have creative writing here, we want to have production, we want to have post-production, we want a soup to nuts, complete film business, and I think that's what we're trying to accomplish here. So I think that's what we're trying to do here. All right, we're going to go ahead and move on, and Mr. Hudson, if you could talk to us about the next part 3 of the bill that talks about our foreign adversaries.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman, thank you. My name is Brian Hudson with the Hudson Group. So this is language that basically, in a nutshell, closes a loophole for existing law. Existing law basically prohibits a company that has a significant investment from a foreign adversary from doing business with the state. This closes a loophole on third-party vendors.
Okay.
That's basically what it does.
Yeah, okay, any questions on that? That's a good deal. All right. Senator Halpern, we've already heard your music bill. Just tell us, it goes to Community of, Department of Community?
Correct. This
Okay.
would live within the Department of Community Affairs.
Okay.
And create that centralized hub to accommodate all of our music opportunities so that we can start to better leverage them, market them, promote us as a destination place for music. We've got the infrastructure. It's just a matter of creating that centralized hub, as many of the states around us are doing.
you basically want to create the music business like we've done with film, correct?
Exactly right.
And this will give you the vehicle to
This-
do that?
This would provide the
All right.
vehicle to do that.
Any questions on the music section of this bill?
Might be the easiest thing.
That we passed this last year, didn't we,
You-
Senator?
We have passed this bill out of this committee last year, earlier this year. You've heard it multiple times. It's a
Yeah.
very strong opportunity for the state, and it really is a matter of, recognizing music as economic development and leveraging the assets that we've got. We've got the ecosystem. We're stronger than many other states with that ecosystem, including Texas, which has had a music office for 30 years now. North Carolina just launched their own last summer. Tennessee has one. So this is a growing trend in states, and we've got everything that we need to actually really
All right,
have a
we-
launch pad.
Got one question from our
Yeah.
Vice Chairman.
Senator, we put film under economic development. Why would you put this one under DCA?
So the thought here is that the Department of Community Affairs, really every single day, is focused on local economies. And because so much of our music assets are scattered around the state in local municipalities, that they're really well fitted to be able to continue to orchestrate that work. If you think about Savannah, which had a huge investment in their arena, and if you think about the work that's happening in Macon and Athens and certainly Atlanta. So Community Affairs is already really focused on local economies and local economic development, and we thought this fit very nicely with that.
Okay. Any other questions of the committee? All right, I'm going to ask legal counsel, I'm going to go back to this population question. What's,
Yes, sir, I believe this could be considered a population act based upon specification that this only apply to areas, I believe, of 100,000 people or less.
so do we need to strike?
Yes, I think it would be appropriate to strike the language limiting it based upon population.
Okay. All right, Senator, you want to make an amendment on this?
Well, there are ways of making it, if you say rural designations as designated by DCH or something like that, which is a 50,000, county of 50,000. Rural designation by DCH is another option.
Okay, why don't you, let's do this. We're gonna take a motion and then we'll do an amendment. If you can come up with a quick amendment, Chairman Watson. Any other questions before I take a motion? But do we have anybody from the public? Did you have any sign-up sheet? Well, Matt, you've already spoke. Corn, she spoke. Jeff Mullis, you need to speak or no?
I don't think so.
Okay, all right.
And I did want to say something. We passed this years ago, put in economic development. They have ignored it.
I got you. That's why we're going to DCA. All right, so here's, let's kind of go over it real quick. I'll entertain a motion for LC 590163S, and remember, we have struck lines 7 through 13, where the word "to" on line 7 through construction on page 1, and we've stricken part 2 completely, which is lines 284 through 418. And then I will take a motion, and then we'll entertain an amendment. So moved. Got a second? Second? Okay, we got a motion and a second. Now I'll entertain an amendment.
Let's go with him first.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, I know this is not the amendment you're asking for, and I have an amendment in the alternative if this one fails, but I'm actually, the longer I listened to the discussion, the more concerned I became.
Okay.
I don't know that putting a tax bill that we have not had the opportunity to vet on the rest of the good legislation is maybe putting the sub in a position to fail. I think it's doing a little bit much right now. And there's a good piece of legislation I'd like to protect on this bill.
Right.
So my first motion would be to strike lines 1 through 6 up to the semicolon, and to strike lines 22 through 281 and to renumber accordingly. And that would be to remove the post-production tax credit legislation from the bill. And with apologies to my friends, I think this sub's trying to do too much right now, and I wish we had a more opportunity to discuss. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Well, I appreciate your.
Striking the post-production.
So you've got an
part of the
amendment. Do I have a second?
Second.
You got a second on that? Okay. Well,
If I may,
and look, I spoke to legal counsel before we went forward on this, because I was concerned a little bit that this is a revenue bill starting here in this committee, but it's really a House bill, so I thought we could move forward with it, and that's why I went ahead and went forward with it. Because I'm a big believer in the film industry, and I want to continue to grow it, and I think the post-production there are some very, very good jobs and opportunities. Mr. Campbell, real quick.
I didn't clarify it earlier, but if the production, that tax credit, so if the post-production claims the credit, there's no double dipping. You cannot go back and claim it again, and someone else cannot claim it. So it eliminates that.
Let's call the question.
Okay, so I have an amendment to the motion. All in favor of the amendment, raise your hand. You got 4, all opposed to the amendment?
It's 5. 5, recount.
Wait,
5.
okay, hold on, 1, 2, 3, 4,
I'll give it to you.
5.
You know what you,
Wait, look, I need to get hands raised that are for the amendment. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And those against? 1, 2, 3, 4. So 6-4, the amendment passes, and we strike that language, and I'm sorry about that. So we're going to, do you have that?
Yeah, Senator McLaurin, I believe that was a motion to strike lines 1 to 6 and 22 through 281.
1 to 6 through the semicolon.
1 to 6
Yeah.
through the semicolon. Thank you.
And 22 to 281 and renumber accordingly. Thank you.
Sorry about that. Okay, now we have another amendment on population from Senator Watson.
Well, I mean, I think
Chairman.
that's been struck, though.
Oh, yeah, that's now been struck, correct. Okay. All right, so now we're going to vote on the bill as amended. Yes.
Mr. Chairman, you have to make your amendment to strike section 2.
What's that?
You have to make your amendment to strike section 2.
Do I have to make an amendment to strike section 2? Okay, well, I'm going to make an amendment to strike,
Let me do this for you.
all right, you go ahead and do it.
I move that we strike on line 7, from the 2 to the line 13, and then strike section 2 of the bill.
Okay, I've got an amendment to strike that, to strike
You need a
those.
second.
I need a second. Got a second. Any discussion on that amendment? All in favor, raise your hand. All right, that's unanimous. Okay, thank you. So now we're voting on the music section and the Mr. Hudson section, I think it's part 3. So that's the motion we have now as amended. Any discussion on that? All in favor, say aye, or raise your hand. All right, it passes unanimously. Okay, that's it. Before we leave, again, I want to thank Mr. Hudson for breakfast, and I want to thank everybody on this committee. This is my last committee meeting. It's kind of bittersweet. I've been down here 13 years. I love this Senate. I love this body. It's family. And I just want to thank Megan for doing a great job, and Ellie, and thank the whole staff. Thank y'all for all y'all did this year to make this committee, I think, a great committee. We've had a good time. We've 8 o'clock in the morning. I know it's tough, and I want to thank y'all for all being here.
Mr. Chairman, pardon me, required.
And again, I just want to say thank you. Okay? Yes?
Since you're going to be the treasurer of the United States of America, you might be able to fund the senators.
At least autograph the money.
Exactly.
But anyway, thank y'all very much. We're adjourned, and I'd like to take a quick picture. Or you get in.